Just waiting for Reverend Aaron Long to join us in our Theological Gabfest. We've been talking about Aimee Byrd. Here comes Aaron now.
Morning, Donald.
Hey, Aaron, how are you?
I'm good. I just wanted to fill you in. Indirectly, one of your buddies, the Right Bishop Haverland with the ACC, has now condemned and cut off intercommunion with the UECNA and made the outright claim that Anglicanism is not Protestant and the UECNA is. Of course, this is the same guy that's so stupid that he claims that the Polish National Catholics aren't heretics, even though they're both Pelagians and Universalists. So I don't know how people get this position when they're dumb as a bag of stumps in the first place.
When did this happen?
Oh, there was a letter that came out. He didn't even communicate with the rest of the bishops in the G3. He just went through the ACC and did it.
I have a friend who's ACC and is a bishop with them, lives in town here. I remember when he was UMC as a Navy chaplain, and then he went through several iterations. He was a conservative from Asbury Seminary,
Yeah.
conservative Arminian. I wonder what prompted that response.
I have no idea, other than I think he's been buddying up with a bunch of old Catholics, and he has to. Honestly, he's stupid. He really is too dumb to even be a clergyman, much less a bishop.
He's got a PhD.
Okay, Donald, I can get a PhD. I can go online and pay somebody to give me a PhD.
Yeah.
All that paperwork, I'm sorry, please do not take this the wrong way. One of the things I've learned in my ministry is, while I am a firm believer in solid theological training and continuing education and all the rest of it, a lot of the paperwork is about as useful as the roll of toilet paper that sits in my bathroom. I know a series of Baptist preachers that all have doctorates, but they got them because they went to that degree mill in Winston, Piedmont University, and they issue doctorates for how many sermons have you preached?
Oh. This is recent, like this week?
It's recent, yeah. I can't go any deeper into all that because technically I'm not supposed to know it.
Oh, I guess Peter knows it.
I am not at liberty to say.
Well, it doesn't make much difference. They're small and insignificant.
I just can't get over how stupid people are.
They're Romanists.
Yeah, but the Romans, the Papists ain't going to take them.
Yeah.
And Haverland's theology, the more I've read on him, is incoherent. He can't decide whether he's a Papist or an Orthodox guy, and he doesn't seem to see the inherent contradiction between St. Thomas Aquinas and St. John of Damascus, and he tries to, it's like trying to put together two puzzle pieces, all the while he plays with Anglican orders, which is a distinctively Protestant concept. And it is either insanity or ignorance, and I don't know which one it is.
Well, I wonder if that'll bring division to the G3.
I hope so.
Because the APA is as Tractarian and Romanist as the ACC.
I know, and I agree with you, but hopefully Chandler Jones and them realize that if Haverland thinks he can universally pull this crap, that none of them are safe either, that Haverland's trying to make himself Pope.
Ah, the
I mean,
papal.
I'm sorry, realpolitik plays into this also.
Yeah.
Anyway, so how's your reading going?
Well, good. I finished Aimee Byrd's very first book in 2013 when she was, let me see, 37 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Still OPC. It's called The Housewife Theologian. And it's actually a very good book. I can see how, on the trajectory she was putting forward, how OPC ministers would enjoy it. Carl Truman bought into it, Reverend Todd Pruitt, um, Presbyterian and Reformed Publishing, which is very picky.
Oh, I like they're the ones that did the reprint of Nevin's translation of Ursinus's commentary on the Heidelberg Catechism.
Yeah. Uh, I started at the wrong place. I started with her 2021 Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. Uh, and of course, knowing that there had been a dust up, and I still don't know a lot of details about how the dust up developed. But the second book I have is in 2015 when she's 39,
Mm-hmm.
and it's called Fighting for the Faith. And it's basic and it's very good. It's basically an exhortation to perseverance, to fight the good faith, to hang tough, to Hebrews 3:13, let us hold fast to the confession of faith. And it's actually okay. She's a layman, but she's done her research and it's very workable. Now, the third one I've got is No Little Women, and I haven't read that yet. But again, that's by you got even Liam Gallagher of 10th Presbyterian writes favorably, again by Publishing and Reformed. This is in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And I think then from there she goes to the Recovering from Biblical Manhood and Womanhood. I want to reread it in light of the new trajectory that,
Well, Donald, if you don't mind, can I set an agenda for us to follow so we're not just shooting all over the map for the next two sessions?
yeah,
All right. I would like to discuss this issue in the following order. And here is where you and I can help each other out. Because I am speaking as an outsider looking in, and there is a degree to which you're speaking as an insider looking at what's going on. And where I'd like to start, and this is where I would like you to take the lead, is to explain, and you'll get why I'm doing this, why Machen felt the necessity to leave the Presbyterian Church United States of America, PCUSA, and form the OPC. Then I would like to discuss how higher education and later on the rest of the educational system and the culture got taken over by the Frankfurt School of Marxism, and how it was reduced to subjectivity rather than objectivity, and then how that crept into the educational and publishing systems within, say, the PCA and the OPC.
that
And
that that whole subject would be something you would know more. I don't know a lot about
and
Frankfurt
and and
School.
I understand that. And I'll explain why I'm laying it out this way. Because once we get to that point, I can actually lay out her entire system of development, how her thought gradually moved to where it was and why it moved to where it was.
There's a couple of things that arise that piqued my interest over and over. She will have like a full page of questions that she has, and they're always coming back to her own subjective state of thinking. Now, that's not once, but that happens very, very frequently.
And
Number two, it always revolves around her thinking, although in these first two books, she does a fair job of bringing other commentators in. I'm really rather impressed with these first two books. I was not quite expecting that, but she had a lot of people fooled for whatever she does believe now. I don't know. But a lot of Reformed, Presbyterian and Reformed guys were on board. Like I just said, Dr. Liam Gallagher, he got into trouble at 10th. He's no longer there, but he was there for years, had an affair with a woman. They got rid of him. But he was a big name. And here he's endorsing her. So she had a lot of people on board.
you haven't got it. You haven't got in Rules for Radicals and opened it yet, have you?
I have it. It's coming up. It's in the queue. It's number 2.
All right.
I also want to get Daryl Hart's books
Mhm.
that looks at the life of Machen and the history of the OPC and the history of late 19th, early 20th century Presbyterianism. I want to get his 3 books and do a forensic review because he knows the OPC very well.
All right. Well, before we even get started and I start playing 50 questions with you about Machen and his journey as far as where you're at and your knowledge of it, I want to make this observation. What you just described with Aimee Byrd is directly the vanguardist plan laid out by Saul Alinsky. Saul Alinsky, once you get into Rules for Radicals, in the introduction, is talking about the hippies. And he is talking immediately about the hippies were trying to promote Marxism, but he addresses where their problems were. And I'm sort of paraphrasing it because I can't quote it directly off my top of my head, and I don't have my copy here with me at the church. But Alinsky says the problem with the hippies was not what they believed. The problem with the hippies was the way they went about things, because they would go into these governmental political settings with their long hair and their unwashedness and their bare feet, and they would try to address these issues as the Marxist vanguard. And he said they would automatically be cut out of the conversation because they presented as something radically rejected by the society at large. What Alinsky says is that he had learned from observing this, the same as he had learned when he was organizing the unions and everything else in Chicago and around, that if you want to address power, you have to look like the power. You have to cut your hair. You have to be immaculate in your presentation. You have to learn to speak the language of the dominant culture. And what you have to do is you have to question the culture using the Socratic method in such a way as you do not come off as offensive, but instead you come off as a learner. Because as you come off as a learner, you start to cause people to question their own beliefs and their own perspectives. In the beginning, you have to look like you agree with them. You have to look like the dominant power base. You have to talk like them. You have to walk like them. But all the while, you slowly do what Satan did, because he dedicates the book to Lucifer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if you look at the beginning of Rules to Radicals, he has dedicated the book to Satan. And he says that he doesn't believe, he's an atheist who doesn't believe in heaven or hell, but if he had the choice, he would rather go to hell. And he said he would organize labor in hell.
Wow.
But he uses Satan's playbook. Think about it. Satan gets into the garden. And what does Satan do? Satan doesn't say God is wrong. Satan said, hath God said. He does not come in coming at them from a direct frontal attack. He comes in with them by coming in laterally and calling into question. It's what Satan does with Jesus during the temptation. During the temptation, Satan quotes scripture to Jesus. Two of the three temptations, Satan directly quotes the Old Testament. He does it out of context. He does it in an odd way, but Satan uses the tools that God has left to try to tear down God's kingdom. That is exactly what the Frankfurt School attempts to do and
Is
has
it
done.
is it satanic, the Frankfurt School, in your view?
Yes.
I don't know enough about all that.
Well, they're Marxists, so by nature they are satanic.
Yeah, Marxism is atheistic materialism.
Right. It's actually a form of Gnosticism. It is a secret knowledge that leads to salvation. And there is an elite clique that has the secret knowledge that must rule and run, and they must keep the knowledge secret. Marxism is not a philosophy, it is a godless religion, much like Buddhism, where the state adopts the position of God. And there is sin, there is salvation, there is everything that there are ethics. Wokeism is a religion, and that is why people have such problems fighting it. And if you don't believe me that it's a religion, if it were just a philosophy, let's say you and I are arguing Plato versus Aristotle. We can give and take and concede and everything else in our discussions. We may not convert each other, but we can give up on points where if you're the Platonist and I'm the Aristotelian, we can acknowledge the weaknesses. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right, go to some wokey, go to some blue-haired, tattooed, pierced, genderless blob and point out that communism killed more people within 100 years than all religions put together. And this is including the Muslims, the Hindus, this isn't just Christians. Literally, if you look at the numbers, communism within 100 years killed more people than all world religions that we know of put together over the last 2,000. They are going to rail. They're not going to come back with a coherent, we're going to sit down and discuss this. They're going to have an emotional reaction because it is not a philosophy, it is a religion. Marxism is a religion. And if you don't believe me about that, look at what Lenin and Stalin and Trotsky actively did whenever they took over Russia. They recruited the icon painters. If you look at early communist artwork, at even later communist artwork, their posters, all of that, they bear a striking resemblance to Orthodox iconography. They take over the Kremlin, which was the cathedral church in Moscow. They preserve linen and create a place of pilgrimage where linen's body lies uncorrupt. Mao in China writes the Little Red Book, which acts exactly as a Bible does for a Protestant, to the point where the people would memorize and quote the Little Red Book, and there would be party communist leaders that would come in and act as preachers, preaching from the Little Red Book. We are not fighting a philosophy. We are not fighting an economic theory. Look at wokeism. Wokeism grows out of New England Puritanism. And in the same way, the Puritans went into a purity spiral, which happened during during parts of the English Civil War, and it happened radically with the Salem witch trials and all that, where everybody was trying to prove that they were more Congregationalists than anybody else. Hence, they were killing the Quakers and driving the Baptists out and all the rest of it, and we can argue whether that was a good thing or not. Wokeism is a godless form of New England Congregationalism.
I just finished and I'm working on Charles Hodge in Romans 1:18-32 is doing that this morning. And it's emphatic that God has revealed himself in nature so that it is universal. And that's one of the great arguments for the existence of God, is that in nature and in man's conscience, God has made himself known as to his eternal deity and godhood. And then Paul, of course, turns that around and says, even though they knew God and do know God, and with the active consciousness of God, they hold it down. They twist, they pervert, they distort, so that they end up doing all these bad things that the rest of that chapter outlines, and even rejoice in it. So I think you're offering a very, very good corrective or amplification on things like Buddhism, Marxism, communism as a religion.
Well, you know what's funny though?
And it's twisted.
As you run this, if you go back to the Diamond Sutra in Buddhism, which is their original text, and you read Buddha's words in it, Buddhism initially started off legitimately as a philosophy and not a religion, because Buddha functionally was a Hindu. This was his philosophical musings, and Buddhism got turned into a religion as it spread. Marxism is basically a perversion of Christianity right from the beginning, because Marxism starts off with the Christian ethics and it ends up warping all those ethics into an envy-based system.
Yes. Yes.
Marxism could not exist. Communism could not exist. The type of socialism we are talking about could not exist outside of a Christian society. It must originate in Christendom. It must grow out of Christendom. It can only flourish in the remnants of Christendom, because ultimately it is a Christian Gnostic heresy.
Wow, you are really stretching my mind here this morning when you use a word like Gnostic, because I am just beginning to work through Schaff's Ante-Nicene Fathers. The document is like 38, 40 volumes. And God willing, if I have time left in the rest of my life, I propose to go through all 38 volumes, which he gives his introduction to each section and each document, and then does us the great favor of quoting those documents.
Well, remember, Gnosticism is a religion that cannot exist on its own, period. Gnosticism is a parasitical religion. It must attach itself. Manichaeism was Gnostic, but it was Gnosticism attached to Middle Eastern mystery cults.
Again, back to subjectivism.
Right. Gnosticism attached itself to Christianity. Gnosticism attached itself to Judaism, which is where we get the Zohar and the Kabbalah. Gnosticism attached itself to Islam, and you get the Sufi orders. Ultimately, over and over again, Gnosticism is like Satan's trump card, because what Gnosticism is a parasitic religion. It is a religious system of thought. Gnosticism attached itself to outright Hermeticism also, but I don't want to get into the weeds on that. It is a religion that cannot exist without a host religion to contain it. The Cathars. The Cathars are a perfect example of a Gnostic Christian sect, where they had the pure ones, which were their priest class, and so on and so forth. Communism, Marxism, is another form of Gnostic Christianity taken to an extreme place.
Well, to bring it up to date, they have this New York City mayoral race going on with this avowed communist and socialist. Mondani is his name, I think. And he's a Muslim, and he's all for global intifada. And I really wonder what his...
All right, that gets into a relic of the Cold War. Muslims learned early on in the Cold War that, number one, the Quran actually has a surah that says you can lie to non-believers.
Yes.
And Islam learned early on in the Cold War that they could use the communists and the socialists to advance their cause. They could straight out lie to them, basically use them as the horses to pull them into society. They've done this most clearly in Europe. Let's look at the situation England is in now. The Muslims used the socialist regimes in the European governments to allow for the immigration. They come over into Europe under the socialists, saying they're saving these people from all of these different predations in their home countries. But what do they do when they ride that horse in? When they ride that horse in, they immediately start setting up Islamic communities. They immediately start establishing Sharia law. Then, once they are established, they start running for political office. And as they run for political office, they start to weaponize the socialist government to where now you can be condemned for hate speech or evangelizing in England, but the minarets of the mosque can shout out the call to prayer and nobody can say a word about it. You see it in France, to where you can put all sorts of blasphemous pictures of Jesus up and mock Roman Catholics and Protestants. But if you were to condemn the Prophet Muhammad and even try to draw a cartoon of him, what's going to happen? You're going to get attacked, and the people that attack you are not going to be persecuted. Germany, these gangs of Muslim men run around raping all of these women, but you cannot call them Muslim because that would be considered to be hate speech. You never trust the Muslims, period. They are militantly anti-Western culture, and the jihad has not stopped the entire history of it. Islam is built off of military conquest. It is not a religion of peace, and this goes all the way back to its founding prophet Muhammad. If you look at where Islam takes over, it always takes over in a militant way, whether it be actual military armies or it takes over in a militant way through taking over the culture and the society.
Archbishop Trench, who wrote the famous book on synonyms of the New Testament, said that Islam was God's judgment on Christians.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just talking about this from a sheerly practical view on the whole system. But what we are fighting, Donald, is not a philosophical war. We are fighting a religious war, and we are losing. And we are losing from the very beginning because Thomas Jefferson stabbed us in the back with his letter to the New Hampshire Baptist Convention when he came up with that term, separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And I will tell you why. Because there can never actually practically be a separation of church and state. There may be a separation of a church cultus machinery and state. But anyone who is truly religious will carry their faith into every aspect of their life. So by saying a separation of church and state, what Jefferson did was he created a secular American religion that trumps Christianity. Have you ever questioned why we have American flags in church and sanctuaries?
Not really.
Why would we? Is the church distinctively American? Why does the church celebrate the 4th of July? Why does the church celebrate Veterans Day or Memorial Day? I am not saying I have a problem with any of those holidays. Why would the church celebrate them?
My church doesn't do that. We don't have a flag either.
But the majority of churches do. It is because we have superimposed this secular faith into American Christianity, and it's been driven by the machine of the government. I always laugh about this with C.I. Scofield, and this is sort of a diversion, but C.I. Scofield was an adulterer. He was a criminal. He had been involved, and he was not even seminary trained. He was a lawyer. Why is it Oxford all of a sudden starts printing his study Bible with his study notes?
You're talking about the dispensationalists?
Yes, but C.I. Scofield was never seminary trained. He was eventually ordained by a Baptist body, but he was never seminary trained. He's not, even the Baptist in his time period did not take his theological views seriously in their academic circles. So why would Oxford, possibly at that point in time the world's most prestigious printing house, print his study notes in a Bible?
Money.
Because the powers that be wanted to create dispensationalism. Dispensationalism neuters the church. Go back to the time period the Bible came out. The church, for the most part, whether it be apostate or regular, the church, for the most part, still controlled education. It still controlled healthcare. The church was still the predominant cultural influence. What does dispensationalism do? it neuters the church, because dispensationalism gets so caught up in end times expectation and in the church stepping back and saying the world is already lost, we need to retreat, that it caused the church to give up all of its God-given duties.
Interesting.
So they doubled down on dispensationalism, and as they do, the church retreats from society, because the church is only concerned about saving souls. And they invest, the various governmental bodies and everything else invest in promoting dispensationalism. And it increases by the time we get to 47, 48, the end of World War II, because why would America give two flips about Israel as a nation?
Yeah. Well, from my standpoint, it's because of Auschwitz and World War II and the million Jews that were killed, and they wanted a homeland where they could be safe and protect themselves.
Okay, Donald, I want you to stop.
Not based
Right.
on dispensation.
I want you to stop for a second, though. What about all the Armenians that were killed by the Turks? What about all the gypsies that the Nazis killed in the concentration camps?
Oh, okay.
What about the Ukrainians that Stalin killed many more Ukrainians than Hitler ever killed Jews?
Yeah.
Why is it we single out the Jews over all these other groups that were genocided? And I am not defending the Holocaust. I want to make that clear.
Yeah. I take your point.
But
murder is murder.
Right.
And we all know through general revelation, that's not the Bible, but we all know that murder is wrong by the natural law that's in our being.
Right.
And Romans 2:14 and 15, we know it's wrong to kill our neighbor.
And I mean, the nation of Israel at this point ultimately supports things that the church should never support. The LGBT cause, the transgender cause, all of that.
In Israel?
Yeah.
Okay.
But if you go to talk to any dispensationalist, if I were to bring John Hagee onto the scene, what would John Hagee say?
They're God's special people. They're going to build a temple. All of that's going to be the prelude to the rapture.
Dispensationalism is a wax nose for a political maneuver, not a theological construction. It may have started off as a theological construction, Darby and the rest of his cultists in England, but it was one that was useful for the political movements of the time period. And I'm not saying this in a conspiratorial sense. I'm not saying that there's some great satanic cabal behind the scenes maneuvering things, because I don't need to. I mean, when you start to hear Woodrow Wilson talking about the League of Nations and all of that, we were already at the end of World War I moving toward this new world order, this progressive ideal. And dispensationalism was able to neuter the church to stop the progressive ideal, and dispensationalism was allowed to basically rot out the inside of the church, so it became an empty shell. And you see it come to its culmination in the moral majority, because the moral majority at the end of the 70s ultimately was not run by confessional Christians. It was run by Pentecostals and by dispensationalists. Now, I say all this to get to this point because I got to go. It's 10:40.
Yeah.
And I want to end real quick. Next time we get together, I would like you, if you don't mind, to do a little research and to talk about why Machen felt like he had to leave the Presbyterian Church, and for all intents and purposes, I know this is not exactly how it goes, but for all intents and purposes, start the OPC.
Okay, I'll do my best. I'm jammed up on other readings.
It doesn't need to go into detail, Donald. I'm not asking you to go into, because I mean, you can prove my points with the general outline.
Okay. And then we'll move from there to your picking up the ball with Marxism and
Right. But I hope I've not offended anybody in the audience or you by going down this rabbit trail. It's just there's a reason why we've got to where we are. And nobody seems to want to look at it.
yeah, we have so many shiny objects to distract us.
Right. All right. I'll leave you alone. I got to go, Donald.
Okay, talk to you later.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.